So this is probably going to take a little bit of time for the emulator to warm up. I wish I had remembered to turn it on before we left, but it's interesting because when I was doing this over the weekend, my internet connection went down at home. It would come up, then it would go down. Then it would come up, then it would go down. I guess Charter was having a problem. All right. But the reason I'm telling you that is, okay, so I'm looking to try to see if I want to go in. We already know how to go in and bring in a GIF and bring it in for iOS. All right, we've done that. I went over an example of that with you. And I wanted to do a similar type of thing, but do it for Android. Well, and then, like I said, I had some problems getting some of this stuff to work. I will tell you that with a copy that you have, I went back in and I added comments. So you see there's no comments here. But again, if you go out to the one that I just mentioned, so if you go out to the P drive, you know the drill by now. CIS 152, 156, Spring 2016, in class. There's a folder out there with today's date on it, 412. And if I go through that folder just so you see this, in fact, let's do this. You'll notice that there are quite a few comments in here where there's virtually no comments in the one that I did. All right. I don't know. Hopefully this won't matter and it won't have any effect. What I'm doing right now, go literally how I dug in there and then brought it up in Notepad++. That's how I added the comments. Not really the recommended way of doing it, but I didn't want to go back in again and do and bring up Android Studio and do everything else. So we'll see. Hopefully there won't be any kind of problem with that. All right. So what I would like to do is just go over what I did. All right. You'll notice one of the things that's in here. This is new. All right. Import android.webkit.webview. There's different ways that you can try to bring animation into a into an Android program. I used one of the possible ways, and what I did was I used a web view. Okay, and I was trying to do it in an image view, and you can. Everybody hear me? You can do it in an image view. But then, because this was Sunday night, when the internet finally came back up and I was doing some reading on it, every example that they showed, they were putting in a boatload of code. I'm talking about 30, 40, 50 lines of code to get it all to work. All right? And then I noticed in one of the things on Stack Overflow, somebody said, well, why don't you just use a web view? It's much easier and it only requires a couple lines of code. I thought, I can handle that. So you have to import android.webkit.webview, and you have to actually create a web view. And then in your on create, you have to actually set up the web view. And there's different ways that you can set this up. This looks a little bit different, at least as far as I'm concerned. This looks a little bit different. What I had to do to get this to work, again, just so you see all this, what I had to do to get it to work, if we come in here, I had to go in and add underneath my regular app here, I had to add a new folder that was called assets. Sound familiar? Like XC assets that we have on iOS. All right. But they said go out to your app, right mouse click, choose new, go down to folder, and you'll find that one of the folders there says assets folder. All right. So I just followed the steps of somebody out on Stack Overflow. All right. So I did that. And this is what I put out there. Now, it doesn't look like much because right now it's not doing anything. All right, but you'll see when we run the program, this is taken from literally I went out to the internet, put in rock, paper, scissors, animated GIFs. That's where I took this from. All right. So hopefully this won't take too long to show it to you. But let's see. What I did want to show you is the site that I took it from, because I did it differently between the two different languages. Why? Because I could? I don't know. But so under Google here, I just put in rock, paper, scissors, animated GIF. You can see it right there. And this is the one. And someplace in here, there. So what you'll see when this runs is all this. But it's put in as one file. And it's going to go through the whole progression. There are actually, I think there were like 16 different frames in here. What I decided to do for the other one, the one that you'll see a little bit later, the iOS one, is where you see how when it starts, sorry with this goofy pin it thing that's here, but I decided to just take it where they're both going like this and they're shaking their fists down, just keep that going. All right, so it's going to look different, when it's run between the two of them. All right. All right, so let's take a quick look at the code. I don't think there's anything in here that people won't understand. I needed a way to create a random number. I went back to the old standby. I didn't know if there was a special way of doing it in Android or not, but I already knew how to do it in regular Java, so I just used that way. So I imported java.util.random in order to be able to do that. All right. I added the import Android view.view. I added the import Android.WebKit WebView, and I added the thing for the edit text. So if you take a look here, just to show you real quick, this is the, right there, not much, literally, this is the interface. So I put a title up here, all right, that just, as you can see, or could see, it has just rock, paper, scissors on it. Okay. Then this is the image view right here. And it'll resize itself when the program runs. There's 3 buttons here, the rock button, the paper button, and the scissors button. Then I used an edit text down here that was multi-line. All right. So there it is. What I didn't like about the way that it ran was I literally asked there to be 15 DPs. I tried padding and I tried margin because I tried to push these down, and no matter what, they didn't push down. So it probably was something simple that I was just overlooking, but I'm not sure what it was. All right. So, and then I thought of it this way. Okay. Every time I click one of these, what I'm basically doing then is I'm starting a new game. Does that make sense? All right. And I don't even have to show that for the computer that's doing anything. But I did call a function that was called new begin game when you clicked any one of those. All right. And then once you clicked one, then your value is already determined, rock, paper, or scissors. But then the computer would come in and it would pick a 1, a 2, or a 3, and then it would tell whether you won or didn't win. So what you picked, what the computer picked, what the result was, how many total times you won, how many total times the computer won, and how many total ties there were. So you'll see as we look in here, there's rock and the computer took scissors, so the computer won. All right, 0, 1, 1. Notice now there's 2 ties. I noticed it appeared as though there were a lot more ties doing it this way. Okay? But it was funny because if I play it continually, and I should have put like a restart button or something like that in here, I didn't do that. All right, so there's many ways this program could be fixed, for lack of better words. All right? But like I said, to me, that was an abnormally large number of ties. All right? Could it be something that I put in, the logic wasn't right? Anything's possible. So again, when you see this, see how when it first starts, they just, both hands are just coming down like fists? That literally is about 12 different frames. And for the other one, it just looks like they keep going like this when you see the one for the iOS project. I didn't like all that extra stuff. But here, I didn't know how to break it down into frames. All right? So what I'd like to try to do for next class is not with this one, but I want to give you an example of using a web view. Because a web view isn't typically used for the way I'm showing it right here. A web view is used so you can literally grab things from the web and incorporate them into your program. All right? So, I mean, there's a lot of different ways that this could be done. Example. Okay, for your currency converter program, wouldn't it have been nicer instead of you having to come up with a constant? What if that changes tomorrow? Okay, it would be nice if you were able to go out to the internet, find out what the current conversion rate is between whatever it is, the dollar and the pound, the dollar and the yen, whatever it happens to be. It doesn't matter. And that's what you typically would use a web view for. If you wanted information that would be changing rapidly, it would give you a way to do it. All right? So I'll let that run for a while by itself. Go back and take a look at where is that? Go back and take a look at the code. All right, so I explained this stuff. Hopefully there's nothing new in there. I use constants, which are both a blessing and a curse. All right? Because now I can use the word rock and it means 1. I can use the word paper and it means 2. And I can use the word scissors and it means 3 most of the time. All right? You'll notice I've got a lot of different variables that I created. Did I have to use all these? No. And again, in the other copy that you have, I put in comments explaining what each one of those variables was. So maybe we should just look at it on here. As it says, this thing called result, that's just that bottom edit text that you saw at the bottom. It said the computer chose this, the user chose this, the winner was, total number of human wins, total number of computer wins, total number of ties. That's this right here. All right. This is the web view, as I mentioned, and I will go over that when we look at it in just a minute. Okay. This, and I ended up actually changing the logic around quite a few times as I was writing this. But what I did was I put a Boolean in there called choice made. And one of the things that I did, notice it isn't set in here, but it will be set in the program. But one of the things that I did was, and I didn't have to because I rewrote the logic, but I wanted to make sure that as soon as the computer had decided who won, I set that variable back to false. Does that make sense? What choice made has the computer made its choice yet or not? All right. So this was what the computer chose, 1, 2, or 3. Okay, and that was from the random number. All right, this pretty self-explanatory. How many computer wins? How many human wins? How many ties? This says number of tie games, neither one. I don't think that should have been up here, so that's screwed up, but that's fine. All right, this was what the human chose, and this was the winner, where it comes out and it says the winner was, and it says either human, or it says computer, or it says tie. All right, so you start a new game. You come in here and you assume that as of right now, the computer has not made any kind of choice. Okay, so we come in here and we choose a random number between 1, and 3. Okay? I believe that if I'd have taken this and put it up at the top of the program, where this is where we're attempting to seed the rand, if I'd only done that once instead of every time like I'm doing it here, I probably would have had less ties. All right? Not sure, but probably. Now the computer has made its choice. Okay? Most of this should be pretty self-explanatory. User chose rock. I tried to come up with names that would make sense. So the human being chose rock. All right? And notice it says new game if necessary. So what that means in English is if it's possible that the computer has not picked, but the user's picked, you see what I'm saying? So the computer has not picked a number, has not randomly generated a number between 1 and 3, but the user has. Then I'm saying begin game. And what begin game was, that's what we just looked at, that'll make sure that the computer keeps picking a new number. That's what I'm saying. And if that confuses you, what I'm saying in English is this. What if I just kept pressing scissors? All right. And I want to make sure if I keep pressing scissors like this, and it's hung up, but I don't know why, that I wanted to make sure that this is going to be changing all the time. I don't want it where the user can just keep hitting scissors, 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 and the computer has just chosen paper so that the user will keep winning, 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 winning. In English, that's what I'm trying to say. All right. So this was just the logic, and there's different ways this could have been done. Again, the computer chooses rock, and the user chooses rock, it's a tie. Computer chooses paper, the user chose rock, computer wins. Computer chooses scissors, human chooses rock, human wins. Okay, and it's the same kind of logic for the other ones with the rules of the game. Then when you get done, I call the routine called show results. And what that does, notice what it says. I want to set the computer value, and then I want to increment the appropriate counters. So I'm calling two different methods from my method. All right, so setting the computer value, I used a switch in here. It says if you got a 1, the computer had rock. If you had a 2, the computer had paper. If you had a 3, the computer had scissors. Why? Because I wanted to be able to compare apples and apples. All right. So after we did that, I incremented the counters, which should be, again, pretty self-explanatory. If the winner was the human, add 1 to human wins. Otherwise, if the winner was computer, add 1 to computer wins. Otherwise, add 1 to ties. All right. So the new code that I had to put in, there's nothing in here in on create options menu or on items selected, etc., all that stuff. There's nothing in there that I put in. That's all the stuff that was generated by the system. All right. This, remember, on create, for lack of better words, is similar in nature. It's not identical, but it's similar to having a constructor. So here's where we set the result field. Here's where we set the web view. And here is where we actually loaded that into the web view. Okay? And just to be sure, I even made sure I went in and said choice made equal false. I'm sure there very well could be logic errors in the program. Do you understand what I was trying to do? All right. And again, as mentioned, so I had to come in here and I had to add that assets folder and then add that GIF into it. And as I mentioned, that's the GIF. That GIF actually has about 16 frames in it. And that's everything that you're seeing running here. All right. Now, if you have not done so, please, as soon as you possibly can, please try to do the write-up, and especially if you're doing the same project for both Android and iOS. I only need a couple paragraphs. Some of you have done it already. All right. Thank you, Amber. Thank you, Brad. All right. And I think most people have not. That's all I need is a couple paragraphs. All right. And the last thing that I'll leave you with, be this good or bad or indifferent. Again, when you look in here, some of these comments, as I'm looking at them, might be off a little bit. I should never write comments at 5 to 5. That's what I was doing right before I left yesterday, was I pulled this up and was writing comments. So notice human wins, number of games users 1. Ties, number of games computer is 1. No. This is all screwed up in here, so I'll have to fix that. I will fix it and put it back out there again. I have no problem doing that right now. All right, so the comments are a little bit funky. And I'm going to go and look at this running because the way this should have worked, and it looks like it's stuck here. But if I click scissors here, and I click scissors again, yeah, it is working now. It wasn't before. Do you notice how what the computer is picking is changing? See that? That's because I set that choice made variable, I set it back to false as soon as I printed out the results. And I set it equal to false to make sure that for instance, if I click this long enough, eventually the computer's going to choose paper. If I didn't have some kind of a Boolean in there, now I would just keep clicking on scissors because I keep winning. So I wanted to make sure that when I click one of these, the computer is generating a new value in here also. All right? Hopefully that makes sense. And again, hopefully before you leave today, all right, you will be able to write that 2-paragraph or whatever thing on what you're doing for your project. Remember, project day is approaching. Thursday is the 14th. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks from Thursday. All right. There may be quite a few people in here. I don't know. There may be upwards of 30 people in here. There may not. Last year, if everybody was going to come that said they were going to come, would have come, we would have had 40 people. We had more like about maybe 20 at the most. And that was including the people in the class. So we'll have to see. Again, I've already been told, well, why don't you put it in a bigger room? I don't want to do that because I don't want to have to worry about setting up a virtual desktop on another machine or whatever. I would strongly suggest that you be here on that Tuesday, which is the 17th, all right, so that you can try your project out. Load anything up you have to load up. If there's stuff that you can put out onto Site 5 and you haven't done it before or you're experiencing any problem, hopefully John will be here that day and he will be able to help you. I would like you to be able to dry run this. All right? So you're going to have plenty of time to do that. There's going to be no lecture, no anything that last Tuesday. It's just going to be a time for you to come in here and ideally at least practice your projects. All right? Questions? Again, please try to get everything turned in as soon as possible because the question was asked before. There have been 2 programs for this class, 2 programs for the iOS class. For both classes, it was the BMI and it was the currency converter. Plus, you should also have that third assignment, which is writing those 2 paragraphs on what your final project is going to be. Questions? All right, then I'll leave you with this last thing, and that's this. This looks exactly the same in both of them, but this is the last homework. All right. So you'll notice 1 week from today, I'd like you to try to turn in version 1 of your app, even if it's just started. I need some proof that you've been working on this stuff. You may or may not have heard me say this. A couple weeks ago, I had a meeting with my boss. It's called a PGSA, a Professional Growth and Skills Assessment meeting. And she said the Department of Higher Education, all right, kind of the people who are in charge of all colleges, and it's something with higher ed. I don't remember if it's the department or what. But they're mandating that we come up with a lot more things than we're doing right now to be able to prove that students aren't just like doing all of their work the week before class. They're not ever coming. They're just turning in everything the week before class. They don't want that. That's why I'm having you turn this in stages like this. So even if you don't have much done, I am hoping that you will put something out on your H drive a week from today that shows me what you've done thus far. Doesn't have to be pretty. Ideally, at least some of the functionality will be there. All right? And that's all that I had.